This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. There's a lot of famous opponents and famous feuds and all that we could talk about here today. But if you're going to talk about Andre the Giant, you got to talk about Hulk Hogan. And everybody always goes back to WrestleMania 3. But back in 77, at a high school gymnasium in Gainesville, Florida, Hulk Hogan stepped in the ring with Andre the Giant for the first time. It was a battle royal. Hogan's working as the Super Destroyer. Of course, Andre won the battle royal, as you might imagine. But 3 years later, they take these matches to New York on a much bigger scale. Now Hulk Hogan's managed by Freddie Blassie, and he's billed as a muscle monster with a big ego. And their first singles match in the WWF is a house show in Binghamton, New York, March 28th, 1980. 8 days later, they're in Baltimore in front of a crowd of 10,000 plus. And during that summer, May and June, Vince would book Hogan in Japan, and he would first team with Andre alongside Dusty Rhodes in a 6-man. Process what that must have looked like. Andre, Hogan, and Dusty all on the same team. That sounds like a video game, dude.
And three of the biggest stars at the time. Think about it, in 1980.
It's unbelievable.
Yes.
Of course, when Hogan and Andre return, they're putting together a match at the Big Shea Stadium show. The big main event, of course, is going to be Bruno versus Larry Zbyszko. But they do put Hogan Andre on here, and Hogan slams Andre. And that's a big deal, of course. But the feud continues, and we've got our sights set on what's going to be a big attraction for years to come. When did you first see Hogan Andre? I mean, I know the narrative was always, WrestleMania 3 for the first time ever. But that was a little bit of showmanship. It had happened here, even within the WWF, many times. When did you first see it that you recall?
Madison Square Garden. That's about the time, cable was taken off and people had the Madison Square Garden network on their cable systems, and you would go and you'd watch the live Madison Square Garden show. And that was the first time I saw it.
How do you think, we don't talk about this a lot, but how much different would wrestling have been had Vince Sr. not had a falling out with Hogan about the Rocky movie?
Well, I really don't know, because I'm not really sure how much Hulk's appearance in Rocky would have made a difference in his popularity overall. And I'm not discounting that at all, because Hulk was the most popular wrestler in the world at that time because of the movie. But I still think Hulk had the charisma and that larger than life persona to take it and go beyond.
Here's what I mean, I guess. If Hulk came in and continued down the trajectory he was on, he's getting hot, and Vince Sr.'s booking him pretty well, but then he becomes a bigger star under because of Rocky. Maybe Vince pushes him a little more. It makes me wonder if the business was now thriving all of a sudden and all these other outside opportunities were coming. Would Vince Sr. have expanded beyond his territory? Probably not, based on what we hear. Would he have been as inclined to sell to Vince Jr.? And if not, how different does wrestling look as a result of that?
Well, first of all, as far as Vince Sr. selling, that was going to, I think that based on Vince Sr.'s age and his desire to slow down quite a bit, that was happening. That wasn't determined on Vince expanding the business or anything else like that. Vince's father was getting out of the business. It was time to move on, and Vince made him an offer. I don't know. I think that those things still would have happened. So I just don't know how much I would have made. Now, when you look at how many other wrestlers could have filled that Rocky bill, we're talking about one right now, and that's Andre the Giant. Would have been probably a perfect foil for Rocky and Rocky 3 to do all the shit that Hulk did.
It's just fun to think about, what could have been. Ultimately, we know that, he was a legend everywhere he went. The stories of him visiting Japan are incredible, and him turning over cars. Plus Bucket, says Andre was famous for patrolling the locker room. What was the funniest story you recall of Andre kicking someone out of the locker room?
Probably Michael Hayes and the Freebirds. Now they'll debate this. Michael will debate this, but as legend has it, Michael and Buddy and them showed up. I think it was to Chicago late and came in, and Andre was like, "You're fired. Get out." And they were sent on their way. So there's a lot of disparaging. Michael says they never even made it to the building. I'm going with the folklore and Andre because to me, it's just sounds better. Andre telling, "Get out." And Michael going, "Dig, dig, dig, I'm out."
Instagram, a wrestling historian, wants to know, when would have Bruce Prichard booked the dream match of Bruno Sammartino versus Andre the Giant, and who goes over? So hypothetical, Bruno, sort of the old guard, pre-Hogan, Andre the Giant, the attraction who never quote unquote needed the belt. What do you think happens there?
Back in the day, Bruno probably would have gone over.
So that's why they didn't book it. They didn't want to ruin the mystique or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know that Bruno needed it though.
Right.
But I think that if you were to take that as a dream match of the 70s with both of them at the height of their popularity, that you would have had to put Bruno over.
Lots of rumor and innuendo around WrestleMania 3. You know, they retold it in the whole documentary that Hogan wrote it all out on a sheet of paper. I don't know how much of that I believe. There was concern, allegedly, will he do business? Will he cooperate? And supposedly he had 2/5 of Crown Royal that day. Do you think we'll ever know the real truth about that night or that match, or which version do you believe?
I believe that Andre was fucking with Hulk. I believe that Andre kept Hulk guessing and kind of wondering what he was going to do, if he was going to do business, just to kind of have fun with him. I don't believe for even a half of a second that Andre didn't go into that match and know from day one exactly what he was going to do and how he was going to do it.
And it was easy to see why this was box office. 1.6 million in ticket sales, 450,000 at closed circuit, 5.2 million gross there, plus another 450,000 pay-per-view buys. It's the biggest wrestling event of all time, no matter how many fans you believe were actually there. And supposedly Andre made $1 million for that show. Does that sound right to you?
I hope so.
I hope so too. WrestleMania 3, man, they did this all over the place. The next big super show is going to be brought up to counter program Starrcade. It's Survivor Series. You know, it's going to be very important that Hogan and Andre are featured here. Andre winds up facing Bam Bam Bigelow, defeats him with a very safe double underhook suplex. He has his victory back over Hulk because Hulk's been counted out. And backstage, Heenan's calling for a rematch between Hogan and Andre. Was the whole moment where Ventura thought that Andre won the match at WrestleMania 3, was that planned going in to create some controversy to keep it going? Or was it just a happy accident that then you used to build Survivor Series forward?
I hope it was planned. You know, I remember watching it live, and I was at someone's house, and when Joey hit the mat for the third time, I went, holy shit, they just switched the title. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And to me, it was a 3 count. It really looked like a 3 count. So I hope to God that they planned all of that was all laid out. I want to believe it.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.